Welcome to Is Your Way in Your Way podcast, where your host, Cassandra Crawley-Mayo, helps you break free from obstacles and live life on your terms. Get ready to embark on a journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and inspiration. Tune in as we dive into captivating conversations with experts and explore topics that will ignite your passion and drive. Are you ready to unlock your full potential? Let's dive in.
Good day, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to Is Your Way in Your Way podcast. And my name is Cassandra Crawley-Mayo as your host. And I'm so thankful that you all are here today. And for those new listeners, I just want to share a little bit about what this podcast is about. It's actually a podcast for women, but men are certainly welcome because you have women in your life. But this is about individuals who are stuck, individuals who know that there's something calling their soul to do something different, maybe to forgive somebody, or maybe you want to be an entrepreneur, maybe you want to be promoted, maybe you want to open your own business, maybe you want to get out of a relationship that's toxic, maybe you just want to do something different and you're stuck with it and you're not quite sure how to get out of it. So this podcast actually talks to special guests. I call all my guests very special. And we talk about topics related to what I say personal improvement, even some business improvement. And it also will enable you to have some self-reflection based on some of the things that you've heard. And I always am hopeful that whatever you hear, it'll do something in your belly. I call it like a fire in your belly and say, you know what? If she can do that, I can too. So my special guest today is Denise Lee, and I'd like to introduce you to Denise. Well, hello, Denise. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm blessed, and I'm so happy to just wherever we're going to go, we're just going to have God's way in this conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I concur with that. Now, before I get started, I'm going to read a little bit about Denise, just so you guys can get a little, not real deep understanding yet. I think the questions are going to enable you to do this, but just so you can have a little background on her. Denise is a transformation coach dedicated to helping business owners and leaders overcome internal and external challenges. Drawing from her own experience of facing fears and uncertainties while growing her business, Denise discovered her true calling. That's phenomenal when we discover our true calling, because a lot of us want to know what our purpose is and everything. But anyway, her true calling is empowering others to break through these barriers. With over a decade of experience, Denise now guides leaders in making strategic, growth-oriented choices by simplifying complex decisions. Her empathetic, actionable approach combines real-life examples and straightforward advice, helping clients shift their mindset and unlock clarity and success. Her journey of resilience and growth will resonate with you guys on Is Your Way in Your Way. She's going to offer them some practical tools to turn obstacles into opportunities. Wow, that's good. Denise, let me ask you, before you, I'm going to say you struggled to grow your own business a bit. Tell us what life was like prior to that. What was like your backstory a little bit?
Oh boy. So I'm assuming everybody here is 18 years and up. So I'm going to have some user discretion as advised when I'm about to say this, because when I explain that I am an incest survivor, rape survivor, I'm an alcoholic, recovering alcoholic, I have all these things that have happened to me, and they look at me like, are you okay? Are you functional? And I'm like, yes, but it took a long road to get here. I mean, I'm a child of two West African immigrants who was raised in the middle-class household. Unfortunately, behind the white picket fence and the little poodle named Buster, there was a lot of turmoil. My father, though he was an investment banker, he truly mismanaged his money, and he was also a philanderer. There's no other way of putting it. My mother didn't feel connected at all towards her husband, and frankly anybody, and she used me as a plaything, emotionally, verbally, sexually, any way you can. And that happened from zero, as long as I can remember, till 11 years old. So the foster care system took me away briefly. Had a lot of turbulent situations from then. Was raped by a school counselor. I mean, I had just so much things going on. I turned to alcohol. I turned to all sorts of stuff. Wow. And remarkably, I went to college. Remarkably, I got a corporate job. Remarkably, I was able to leave that environment that was literally enabling me to be a vile, disgusting person that was only about chasing fame and prestige and not connecting with the people I was truly trying to serve. And it didn't really come through service as a business owner that I realized I had to reconcile who I was as a result of wounding and who I really was to become because of God. And so there's a lot of other stuff in between, Cassandra, but the whole journey was an evolution of breaking past what I thought I was and not realizing who God designed me to become. So it's been quite a journey, but I'm so grateful to be here.
Yeah, sounds like it. So tell me, who did you think you were? What, based on your background, who did you think you were?
I thought I was a whore. I thought I was a drunk. I thought I was useless. I thought I could not. I was inept. I was unqualified.
Okay. Wow. Those are all what I call those self-imposed barriers, but based on what you have experienced, the culture would say those things, based on what you've done. Now, tell my listeners, what was it about you that made you pivot? And like you said, it was a long journey, but you don't see yourself as that anymore. Who do you see yourself as now?
See myself as the child of God. I see myself as worthy. I see myself as redeemed. I see myself as a instrument for good. But the process of how I got there was not easy, for sure. But it actually came in a curious kind of way. It came through surrender. Every time I felt that I couldn't take certain people, certain situations, and I said, I don't know what to do, I had to surrender. I had to surrender to guides. I had to surrender to ideas that conflicted to the self-limiting thoughts that I gave on myself.
Right.
And Cassandra, for me, the way I went out was literally stop trying to carry it on my own means, my own strength. My yoke was too heavy. I couldn't. It wasn't designed for me to hold on to it anyway.
All right. Okay. Now, how did you realize that? Like what happened that, because many of my listeners have similarities, and many of them are thinking, I'm no good, my family didn't love me, they gave me away, so your story to me is phenomenal, because in retrospect, you're going to share what it was with you that got you out of you feeling. And you mentioned your relationship with God, or if did somebody turn you on to God? Like how did that happen? How did that relationship start?
It's funny because, and I was just sharing this story to my son, Cassandra, the other day. I said, my mother sat me down and read Psalm 91 and, and Psalm 23. And I just did not believe in a God that would have me around someone who did vile things to me.
Yes.
And so, and I went to church, but I didn't have a relationship with church. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I always had a relationship with faith. God was always 5,000 miles away from me. And I think, Cassandra, to answer your question, I would have these little moments where he would save me from things that I self-inflicted damage and stuff like that. And I didn't understand Holy Spirit at the time. I didn't understand it, but I would always just feel comforted and just saying, like, And some people would say to me, like, God's watching for you.
Mm.
And I would have these moments of quiet moments where I would just think and reflect, and I would feel comforted. And I knew it was something spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
That's my journey.
Sure.
Like everybody
Absolutely.
who's listening, they have their own journey, but that was me. And for me, it was being more attuned to that little voice, that comforting spirit. That was my journey.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. You talked about things that occurred that something confirmed your calling. What specifically was that? And to share with the listeners what your calling is now.
Ready to design your dream life? Join Cassandra Crawley Mayo's Create and Design Your Best Life workshop. Break free from self-doubt and obstacles and step into a life of purpose and fulfillment. Click the link in the description to register now. Don't wait. Spaces are limited. Start living your best life today.
So there's a pastor that I absolutely love. His name is Pastor Paul Shepherd. If you ever had a chance to go to the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, check his ministry out. But one of the things he said, and I truly believe, is the ABCs. And so the first one is ask. I wanted to be curious. I just loved asking questions from people who modeled what I wanted to become.
Mm-hmm.
That was that's A.
Okay.
And B, I believe there was something better. So you ask, you believe. You don't have to have everything kind of wrapped up, but I believed in that. Right. And then C, looking for conferral. Like, what does that look like? You're asking people that know, like, and trust you, the people who see you in the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like, do you see these traits? Like, do you see the fact that I'm communicative, or I'm good with numbers? Or I'm not good with numbers, but I'm just saying, like, you have to find conferral. Like, me neither. Right. My husband laughs at me all the time. You can't do any kind of calculator.
Right.
Anyway, but I digress. Looking for conferral. Like, I literally had people saying, Denise, you're really good with being able to break down complicated things and make it simple. Denise, you're really good with, like, talking with different types of people. That was conferral. And it's the just making sure that I deliver what was inside of me. Because that's the thing. A lot of people think it's like, I need to receive. But I needed to deliver out what was already placed in me. And you get more in return. So I think it was my ABCDs that allowed me to really walk more in confidence with what I already knew was true within me.
Okay. So once you left your corporate job, was it difficult to leave? First of all,
yeah, the money, of course, the healthcare,
right?
The steady paycheck. Oh gosh,
right. So something was really strong enough for you to do that. What was that? And I say that because listeners, many of them want to leave and do something different. But of course, I was the same way. I get a paycheck every 2 weeks. I get benefits. I'm like, that's crazy if I would leave something without something else. Tell my listeners how that happened. How did all that come about?
Okay. I really want to preface what I have to say for everyone who's listening to understand that just because you hate your boss and you don't like the work, it's time for you to spring off and do something different.
Right.
Denise is not saying that. And I want everyone else to know that my situation was because I was literally in a toxic work environment. And at the time, my husband was full on, and I had ample savings from my career that I could be able to invest in my business. So I just want to say that very clear, that everybody may not have the means, opportunity to support the resources to be a business owner. And that being said, I already had a clientele that I had part-time. Okay. So it wasn't like I was starting from zero. So for those of you guys who are listening and you say, I want to just be a business owner, I really want to ask you, are you ready to be an unpaid servant for 3 to 5 years? Because that's really what it is.
Yeah.
Are you ready to be able to understand your client better than perhaps you even know yourself? Their wants, their needs, their desires, their hesitations. That's something that you need to consider too. So, and also, are you willing to invest in your own personal development? A lot of business owners, they fail in the first 90% of them fail within the first 5 years, aside from the financial stuff, is because they fail to understand the stressors that come of being a business owner. And that's not for everyone.
Absolutely. You're exactly right. I'll attest to that as a business owner myself. First time business owner, like I could manage the corporation I was working for. I did really good for them. But then it came a time it wasn't really good for me. And that's when I made a decision that I'm going to do what I felt I was called to do. And that was a process, and it took time. And as I wrote my book, one of the things I always wanted to do was write a book. After I wrote my book, I was like, okay, I'm done. That's it. And something inside said, no, you're not. You're just getting started. You have to, it's kind of like you have to, when much is given, much is required. So you have to give back. That book is not for you. It's for everybody who receives it. So you're right. A business owner is tough. But for me, and it sounds like for you, I just have a knowing that I know this is something that I should be doing. And that's what drives me. And in addition to that, God drives me too, because he's the one that says, look, I have this strong conviction, like this is what you should be doing, and trust me, and I'll see you through all that. So you're right about that for those who want to be a business owner. And if you want to make money in the first year, you're a very fortunate person if you do, or the second year or the third year, So it's right. So I am so with you on that. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Let's talk a little bit about the trauma you experienced. And I say that again because of my audience. Everything is for my listeners. And it's so much trauma that's going on out there. And just being able to not actually let it go, but put it aside or get the support or whatever you need in order to overcome that, because it stops a lot of people. And then some people, it drives them like, I'm going to be this and I'm going to do this. What happens if a person doesn't get healed from it? Do you consider yourself being healed from the trauma you've gone through?
Okay. So if you'll indulge me, I want to make sure that we're all clear about trauma. Okay.
Yes.
So there's a couple of things I want to make sure everybody understands.
Okay.
So a trauma is a situation or event that you lack either the emotional, the physical, or the psychological tools to either understand or to adapt to. Meaning that you may see something that other people may be able to easily overcome, either because of their age, their experience, or their proximity. And the best way I've always explained it to people is, imagine you see a horrific car crash, right? Now, the person that's 500 feet away who has never seen a car crash may have a completely different reaction from someone who's a first responder, a firefighter, a doctor, who sees this stuff almost every week, all the time, right?
Exactly.
The kid in the car may have a completely different perspective than the 40-year-old man who's also had a previous car crash. So it depends on your age, your experience, your proximity, right? And then one other thing I just really want to mention, traumas come into the severity pack of traumas. Everyone thinks of traumas if I was abused or hit, or for a lot of us who came out of corporate America, that was traumatic within itself. That's a whole different story as a trauma within itself. And so everyone thinks that trauma is that you got hit or something else. But so it comes in different varieties. It could be chronic work, right? That's traumatic, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be you are in a family where money is mismanaged.
Okay.
That's trauma. So I really want to validate for everybody who thinks like, well, it wasn't trauma. Well, what if your father always left every night and he never explained to you what was happening? That is trauma. So that being said, everybody, 90% of us in the course of our life will experience a form of some form of trauma, either little t, like those little moments, chronic stressful moments, or something big that just rocks your world. And so to sit here and say that I am completely healed from every single trauma that I've ever experienced is folly. That's not the case. Now, have I been able to adapt and understand what had happened to be able to respond appropriately and be able to tell my story? That's how you know when you're healed.
Okay, good. Because you're very open with it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so that's one of the things that individuals can do. And you're right on, Denise. And I'm so glad that you defined what trauma was, because I'm thinking of a time in my life, and even when I wrote my book, the book is love letters written to women. And they're like, for example, dear women who has scars and resentment, or dear women that compare yourselves to others. And I just kind of want to talk about those scars and resentment and how I had to, well, first of all, the reason it took me a long time to write the book, because I didn't want to be exposed. Okay. I didn't want people to know my stuff. And I didn't know what people would say and all of that. But then eventually I got over that, because what I've been through, so many other people have been through. It may not be the same exact thing, but just something different. And based on the scars that I had, that was trauma for me. It was trauma for me, for me to find out that I had a sister that everybody knew about and I didn't. So I dealt with that for years. So I saw that as a form of trauma for me growing up. So that's why I'm really, really glad that you brought that up. You also talked about there were different types of, what did you call them? Was it people? You talked about there are different types of people, and one was stable. You talked about an anxious.
Yeah. So no, we didn't talk about it, but I can definitely talk.
Right. Exactly.
but I can definitely talk about that. But
yeah.
To your point earlier, I wanted to say, I know that you talked about in your book, external and internal storms. And I really wanted to amplify that, if I may.
Sure.
For a lot of us, when we're going through something traumatic, right, we have, our world is rocked, our way of how we relate to ourselves and how we view people has changed. And we have feelings that are unprocessed. Anger, guilt, shame, resentment, all that storm is brewing inside of us, right? And then we've also got the storms that are brewing out around us, the people who are unable or unwilling to be able to comfort or relate or understand with you.
Right. Okay. I got you. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Right.
So there are 3-4 different types of people in the world. Okay. If you're one of the lucky 20-30% of us, you're considered a stable person, emotionally stable person, meaning that you're able to understand, relate, process, communicate in a way that shows love and concern for yourself as well as other people, right? That's the ideal happy case, stable, confident person. Unfortunately, if you have gone through any type of chronic stress or traumatic incidents, you fall into one of these other categories. You are an anxious person. And that's, in the clinical terms, is called neurotic. And so what that is you're constantly fearing what had happened or what will happen. And you're constantly time traveling in the past or the present. And those kind of personalities are the ones that are people pleasers. The ones that will never, ever say no, even despite the fact that they've got 10 other things they got going on simultaneously.
Right.
No, I'll drop everything, sweetheart, and I'll come and help you.
Right.
They're the ones who have the full workload and they'll do everything. That's it. Or you may fall into the bin of the avoidant, where you believe you're incompetent or unworthy. You don't want any criticism whatsoever. And you're the one who will procrastinate. Or avoid, or you're the ones who are quick to be sarcastic or say snippy things, all to keep people away from you. And then there's the last one is disorganized, where you have this push-pull situation where I love you, come close. No, don't come too close. No, I want to spend time with you. No, not really. These are the people that we call wishy-washy. And anyone who's anxious, avoidant, or disorganized has gone through unprocessed trauma.
Okay, that's good. Say that again. If anybody's what? Anxious? Say it again.
Anxious, avoidant, or disorganized, you have unprocessed trauma.
Okay, all right. So individuals listening to that was like, wow. So it's enabling them to think about, really, like some people like, so did I go through any trauma? They're not quite sure whether they went through trauma or not. But those are some types or some behaviors that will articulate whether they've gone through trauma. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of characteristics for someone who has unhealed trauma. They're suspicious. They blame, they externalize, they use magical thinking and saying, if I was there in this certain time, this certain place, then maybe I could have changed events in these sequences. They are the ones who minimize their interactions with people. No, I wasn't that part of that problem. It was really their problem. Or they magnify. If everyone wouldn't do things my way, everything would be perfect. And so there's more cognitive, it's called cognitive distortion, the fancy way for how you think is not in line with reality.
Right. Okay. And you also, what I've read and did some reading about you, let's talk about the mindsets.
Yes.
What do you do with your clients to shift their mindset? Give us some examples about that.
Well, this is making the assumption, Cassandra, they actually want to heal, because not everyone who's thirsty wants to drink.
Okay.
So we're making this assumption.
Sure.
Okay? And we're also making the assumption that they're not addicted to being a victim.
Okay.
Because a lot of people love sharing their stories about their woes and how everybody mistreated them, and glorifying all the pain that they experience so they can make themselves feel special.
Right.
And I'm not saying we're not special, for sure. Everyone's special.
We're special. We all are. Right.
We're all special. But if you're doing it at the expense of ignoring your part, your culpability, or what was really happening, you're mistaken about who you really are. So when we're making the shift into our mindset, we're actually saying to ourselves, I am aware and I am ready to be able to see truths about myself and others, which may feel uncomfortable and may be downright painful. And I'm willing to be able to be responsible in how I choose to move forward despite what had happened. So it's the choice with eyes open, feet on the ground, open heart, to understand like who am I really? Right. And what part did I play, and what can I do now?
Right. Okay. So you are a coach to helping business owners and leaders. Could you give an example in regards to a business owner or a leader who said, I'm ready. I'm open to what you're going to do. I know I need to shift my mindset. I'm all open to what you say, Denise or Miss Lee. So what process would you use after that with individuals?
For me, this is the way my practice, everybody's practice is a little bit different, but my practice is literally going reverse engineering, meaning I love to know, if you want to shift to what? Right. What person do you want to become? And why do you want to become it? because we can't be able to move forward without a map in mind. Like, think about it. When you want to go somewhere new, where you're traveling, you just say, hey, I want to go to Chuck E. Cheese. And then what's the machine going to say? Well, where?
Where? Right. Exactly.
Where do you want to go?
Yeah. GPS.
And so I always like to ask, like, why is this important? So that we actually have some clarity. Because some people, they have an idea of, I just want to be able to make the comment is, I want to make lots of money. Well, why do you want to make money?
That's right.
Right. Like, I want to feed my kids. Everybody wants to feed their kids. Mm-hmm. I got to get out. Everybody.
Real why.
Mm-hmm. Like really. And how is this going to be of use? So once we understand that, then the next thing is, what traits within you that you find that is getting in the way of your success? And then we come to action items to be able to say, okay, we're going to work on this. Okay, we're going to work on your anger. Your anger is really behind the desire to control. Why are you seeking control? Right. I don't feel comfortable with uncertainty. Why are you seeking uncomfortable? Why are you feeling comfortable with uncertainty? Mm-hmm. So it all goes back to reverse engineering to figure out exactly little daily things to help you move to the person that you want to become.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good, because in my business, my mentoring business, I'm all about mitigating barriers or self-imposed barriers that's preventing you from living your best life. And it's interesting because I usually ask individuals from a scale of 1 to 10, and 10 being the highest, where are you on that scale in living your best life? And, that's like, what are you talking about? Some people immediately say, I'm an 8, or I'm a 2. I'm like, they haven't even really thought about what their best life looks like. So you have to find from them what it is that is your best life, and why is it the same thing that you do? As you indicated, all coaches are different. This is the way I do my process. Cassandra will probably do her process a little different, but still, that's the first thing. And it's kind of like, are you ready to be, are you ready for this? Because you have to do some tough love. If this is what they want to do, you have to say, well, the why. Like, people like, I just want to feed my kids. Just like you said, well, okay, we all want to do that. It's a survival mode. Okay, but what's the real why? So you're right on that one. I appreciate that.
Ms. Cassandra, I know that you talk a lot about being present, right? And I know people are listening and they're trying to multitask right now. And so I just want to call it out right now. If you want to take that shift, you need to be present and engage in what you want to get out of this conversation.
Exactly. You get out what you put in it. It's just like, in school, a test or a speech or whatever, a training. Right. Exactly right. Denise, you have a podcast called Learn to Be the Real You. Unapologetically. Is that right? Yes, your podcast name?
The Introverted Entrepreneur Podcast.
Right. Okay. And you're usually not on others' podcasts. Why are you choosing to be on podcasts now as a guest?
I did a really good job of steering people. Obviously, I'm a coach, right? So I do that professionally, right?
Right.
But service comes in lots of different angles. And I know that if I am not in control of the show, it might bring out some ideas or things that I never even considered to talk about. So I love to be in service in different angles. And this is a different way to be of service.
Okay. Now, how long have you been a guest?
I got invited to be a guest a few times last year, but this year I was thinking like, I really want to be challenged. I really want to be on my toes, right? Yeah. And when you're a host, obviously, Cassandra, this is your sandbox. You get to control or deviate. But when you're a guest, like you've relinquished control,
right?
And I want to be able to be comfortable in who I am and the power that's been bestowed upon me to be like, I'm okay that I don't know what's going to happen next. I can still be at peace.
That's good. That's awesome. Because we were talking about before we came on about, I saw that you said you were an introvert. And then I said, well, so am I. And then you said, well, let me talk a little bit about that. So when people are surprised, many people are surprised, and probably with you, that you are an introvert. Do you find that, or you change the dynamic that you're not an introvert, you're both?
Well, it's funny because I've actually had the privilege of talking with some very, very well-renowned therapists about childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And I have talked about this idea in some of my articles on my website, DeniseLee.com, about faux or fake introvert versus fake extrovert. And what I'm talking about is is a response adaptation to stressful situations. So in order for me to make peace, not to make peace rather, but to understand the world around me, I needed to go as inward as I could to de-stress, to calm down, to analyze things. I didn't want to speak out loud. But I noticed that when I'm at calm and at ease, I can easily converse. I can easily get my energy from other people. So when people think about introvert versus extrovert, it's a psychological term dubbed by Carl Jung, where is your source of energy? From inside yourself or from outside? And I realize when I am engaged in topics that really thrill me, I'm totally effervescent. I'm extroverted. But when I'm around people in situations that are scary, unknown, or I don't feel comfortable in my skin, I want to retreat inward.
Right. Okay. That's good, because I'm an introvert. And, I always say, when I share that with people, you're not. Then they're going to tell me what I'm not. And I'm a processor. We could be in a meeting and, I'll just sit there and try to get everything in, and at one time I used to have this barrier that says, oh, they feel like I'm not with it because I'm not contributing, and so I had to get away with that, and then there are times that I retreat and I feel good about that. And then it's like, okay, it's time to speak up because I'm hearing what's going on now. It's my turn. And then it's like E.F. Hutton, whenever she speaks, people listen. So it's not, and we're not saying, my listeners, that introvert or extrovert's a bad thing. We're not saying trauma is a bad thing. We're not saying that. And we're not saying that barriers are a bad thing, because we all have these things. We all have to have barriers and situations where, and particularly when we say, well, I should have done this. I'm a bad person. And when you say I should, that's shame. You don't should on me. That's kind of what I tell people. I should have done this. I should have done that. So I'm with you on the introvert extrovert, and I'm happy to say that I'm an introvert, and I'm happy to say I'm an extrovert when I have to be. So we're not saying all of this for people to start feeling bad. We're just kind of talking about, this is the real deal. This is the real you. It's kind of like your podcast, and you're unapologetic about it. Learn to be the real you. I think is critical. And one thing that I usually say is, I had read an article about a hospice nurse, individuals who are transitioning. And before they pass, she wanted to know, do they have any regrets? And it was like unbelievable, the regrets that they said they have. Times are changing now. So perhaps one of the regrets that really bothered me is they said they wish they would have been more true to themselves. And I'm like, wow. Oh, wow. Is that a regret? And you talked about choice earlier, and we all have a choice. And a choice to me is a gift, so for that individual, it was probably a common denominator to say, I wish I'd have been true to myself. More people said that rather than I wish I didn't work so hard. That's, I wish I'd have spent more time with family. So that right there, I thought was real interesting. So I really like your podcast, and I am going to start listening to it so I can make sure that learn to be the real you, that I'm actually the real person, because I'm still a work in progress.
Oh, well, thank you. I definitely talk about being the real you, but my podcast name is the Introverted Entrepreneur Podcast.
Okay. All right. Now, I don't know where the real you came from. I saw it somewhere that was the name of your podcast. So I apologize for that.
Okay.
But that's probably you talking about being the real you.
That's probably where it came from. Word association. It's all good.
Yeah,
All
exactly. What for my listeners, what are the practical tools to turn your obstacles into opportunities?
For a lot of us who have gone through situations that were confusing, bewildering, uncomfortable, and we didn't have the tools to either understand nor be able to influence, we feel a sense of helplessness, sense of hopelessness. We have a myopic vision of the fact that we're crowded in and we can't break free out of the box or wherever we feel like we're constrained. And the best tip, I have a few tips. The best tip is I want you to ask why. For a lot of us, the reason why we feel like we have obstacles is because we never ask the why. Why is that? Who told you that? We've done such a great job as human beings and giving reasons why we can't. We don't put enough of that energy into why we can't.
Okay.
The next thing is I would love people to understand is to explore your creativity. It's a God-given thing. Remember when we were kids and we found scraps of paper and somehow turned that into a trunk, a donkey, or whatever? We could just figure some stuff together and we let our imaginations run wild. That little girl, that little boy is still within you right now.
Right.
What can you transform? I don't care what you have. Don't tell me you can't start becoming a hairdresser. I don't have a cosmetology license. Who said you couldn't go to the cosmetology school down the street and do a barter arrangement and get some hours in? Oh, I don't want anybody saying no. I'm going to say I don't want anybody rejecting me. Well, sweetheart, you have to understand that not a no no's are fine. And maybe it's a not right now. Or maybe it's banging on more doors.
Right.
Another thing is I really mentioned right now was persistence.
Okay.
And then the last thing I want to share is faith in something beyond just you. The reason why we think as an obstacle is that we think that it's all on our power, all on our strength. We have to come up without anybody input because we believe that we have to do it our way. Well, sweetheart, maybe there's ways that other people have done that you haven't even considered. Perhaps there are books. Perhaps there's obviously podcasts like this you're listening to. Maybe you need to tap into somebody else as well to get some well-needed refreshment.
Right. Exactly. That's good. Exactly. I like those tools, and it made me think of I have the ABCs too. I have an ABC formula, and I call it a secret formula. It's kind of like, when I'm talking about self-imposed barriers, like you indicated, like, why do you think that you can't be this, or why not? Acknowledge that barrier. I mean, what acknowledge it, and then kind of think, well, where did you get it from? What was your belief? I mean, where did that belief come from? But like for me, I was a perfectionist. I still am, but I'm getting better with it. So that means I've been through some trauma, right? But I'm okay with that. And so then, once you know and understand where that belief came from, that perhaps you're not good enough to do this, then it's time to change the narrative. Because if you like for me, the perfectionist came from my mom. Do this. Why aren't you doing that? Why do you look like that? Why do you have that dress on? It's like stepping on eggshells going to her because I wanted to make sure I was just right. So when I understood where it came from and I acknowledged it, then I was able to change the narrative about being perfect, so to speak. Where's no perfect person out there but God. That's the way that I see that. So any last words, because this is the journey from survival to success. is the topic of our podcast today. And as you indicated, Denise, based on what you've been through, and you're not the only one that's been through stuff, but you got beyond that and you see yourself as successful because we talked about what you thought you were. So now tell the listeners what you are now, as you indicate, a child of God. I'm confident. So just think about where you were and where you are now. I think is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we've been talking, Cassandra, one of the things that it's been really apparent to me is that we only box ourselves based on all our own narrative. And if we are to really become the way we're designed to become, right? It's from a place of humility and surrender.
Right.
And curiosity.
Right. Exactly. And you will be amazed if you surrender.
Yeah.
If you surrender. So, Denise, tell my listeners how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, I've made it super, super easy. You literally just take my name, Denise G. Lee, and put it in Google. Or just take that whole name and then add a .com, and then you'll be able to reach me.
Okay, great. And for those who are listening, like looking at the MP4 version, not just the audio, I'm telling you guys that I'm moving around because it just so happened that for some reason, the sun will not go to my right or to my left. It just wants to stay right in my face. And I decided that it is what it is. I'm like, well, maybe, I can reschedule this podcast because it's not right. It's not perfect. So that's just a demonstration. Hey, that's what it is. And I am confident that you got something out of this podcast today. And I also want you to share it with individuals that this will be just right on for those individuals. You know how to get in touch with Denise. Also, I just want to thank her for her insight and her experience and her openness that has been a blessing for so many of you and for me as well. So my listeners, this podcast will be on all podcast platforms. So this is what I always say to everybody. Bye for now, and God bless you all. And again, Denise, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm blessed. Thank you.
Oh, that's so funny because as soon as I turned off, the sun got out. Isn't that amazing? What can I say?
Yeah. Well, I really had a fun time, Cassandra. Thank you so much for allowing me the time to talk with your audience.
Yeah, thank you. Are you in California?
No, ma'am. I'm in Texas.
Okay, because I know Shepherd. He comes to my church a lot. I know him well. I don't know him personally, but I've heard him because he's a visitor. He comes to our church all the time and speaks. So you watch
wow,
him.
I didn't know that.
You watch.
I'm glad I mentioned that.
I am too. That's the ABC guy for you.
Yes.
Right. And when he comes to our church again, I'm going to mention that and tell him how that message really blessed someone that I've spoken with. Okay.
I listen to him all the time. Yes. Yeah. And I've never met him in person, so that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, look, God bless you. Thank you. Continue to do what you do. Likewise. And as I say to everybody, bye for now.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you've been enjoying our empowering conversations, make sure you don't miss out on future episodes of Is Your Way in Your Way podcast. Stay in the loop with all the latest episodes. Join our mailing list over at CassandraCrawley.com. And before you go, hit that like button, share with your friends, and subscribe now. Until next time, let's get ready to live your best life.